family of contributing to this because I know, and I'm trying to tell you as honestly as I know how, what happened.
A lot of things that I've forgotten that I can't remember. For instance, I can go back to my childhood. And
even psychopaths have emotions if you dig deep enough, but then again, maybe they don't.
Somebody out there could have gotten hold of me if the effort would have been put into it. Certainly.
A drug nightmare. Days of not knowing where you are or what you've done.
Number 10, Ted Bundy. The exact number of physical attacks, slayings, and kidnappings carried out by Ted Bundy is unknown.
It's a 50-yard walk from here across the parking lot to the library. That's my fresh air.
My family of contributing to this because I know, and I'm trying to tell you as honestly as I know how, what happened.
He was convicted for slaying 2 Florida State University sorority sisters in January 1978 and a 12-year-old girl 3 weeks later, all committed after he'd escaped from jail twice in Colorado, where he was facing charges in the 1975 slaying of a nurse.
Everything will turn out all right, that you are innocent. Do you still feel that?
Yeah, more than ever.
Central to the development of the violent behavior that I engaged in. Please understand that.
Before being ended in Florida's electric chair on January 24, 1989, he confessed to 30 homicides across 7 states between 1974 and 1978. His last words?
It's difficult to say the least, but I want you to understand what happened.
I began thinking about that way back in Utah.
Salt Lake, when you were extradited, you issued a statement saying,
"I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." Number 9, Eileen Wuornos. Eileen Wuornos was an adult worker along Florida's highways and claimed she only slayed in self-defense. But her slaying of several men in 1989 and 1990, Wuornos was convicted in 6 of the slayings, landed her on the state's ending row. Before she died by lethal injection on October 9, 2002, she acted in the films Independence Day and The Terminator. Her last words? "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock and I'll be back. Like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th. Like the movie, Big Mothership and all, I'll be back." Number 8, John Wayne Gacy. A slayer who dressed as Pogo the Clown for kids' parties and charity events around Chicago, John Wayne Gacy was convicted of slaying at least 33 teen boys and young men.
a lot of things that I've forgotten that I can't remember. For instance, I can go back to my childhood and what kind of activities they were into, and that's what we dug up on each one of the victims.
Between 1972 and 1978. All were slayed in his suburban Norwood Park ranch house, most of them strangled or asphyxiated, and Gacy buried 26 of the bodies in the crawl space beneath his home. In 1980, he was sentenced to die for 12 of those slayings, and he was ended by lethal injection on May 10, 1994.
But still, there is no association. None of them never worked for me, none of them. And when you look over at the photos, I have no recollection of any of them. Never met them.
His last words? "Kiss my ass." Number 7, Timothy McVeigh. Timothy McVeigh, the first and last U.S. terrorist to be ended, bombed the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building on April 19, 1995. He left a final message through a hand-copied poem, Invictus, by Ernest Henley, with his signature at the bottom. "My head is bloody, but unbowed. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." McVeigh did not believe in heaven and hell, but said he would be in good company with many fighter pilots who bombed innocents to win the war. When asked about the 19 children he slayed, he said that knowing there was an entire daycare center might have given him pause to switch targets. Reports from the time detailed McVeigh joking with court staffers and prison guards during his trial to be resigned to his fate as the days of his slaying grew near. He showered, napped, watched CNN, and paced around his cell. He also tossed in bed relentlessly until the jail chaplain paid him a visit. McVeigh revealed he was afraid of being shot like Lee Harvey Oswald, the man convicted in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. He asked if they could land a chopper on the roof, but they said no, and he was offered up. Number 6, Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez, a notorious serial slayer, was sentenced to demise in 1989 for 13 slayings, 5 attempted slayings, 11 physical attacks, and 14 burglaries. Born in El Paso, Texas, Ramirez moved to Southern California in the 1970s.
Even psychopaths have emotions if you dig deep enough. But then again, maybe they don't. No comment.
Tell me what kind of emotions you got going through you right now.
I'll tell you what, I gave up.
And began his violent spree in 1985. His violent spree began when stories of a man breaking into homes in the early hours of the morning began to surface. He slayed victims with arms, knives, and fists, contributing to the fear and frenzy that gripped the region. His case went to trial in 1989, costing Los Angeles County over $1.8 million. The jury convicted him of 11 slayings in Southern California and 2 others in the San Francisco area, and Ramirez received an ending sentence. Despite his horrific crimes, his wife described him as kind, funny, and charming.
You didn't kill 13 people.
Again, it would be improper for me to comment in any regard to that question.
But you're right in there now as far as everybody else is concerned.
Serial killers do on a small scale what governments do on a large one.
His last words? "I am beyond good and evil. I will be avenged. Lucifer dwells in us all. That's it." Number 5, Gary Gilmore. Gary Gilmore was an American slayer who was ended by the state of Utah in 1977, ending a de facto nationwide moratorium on capital punishment that had lasted nearly 10 years. Born to a petty criminal, Frank Gilmore Sr., Gilmore was known for his intelligence and artistic talent, but turned to criminal behavior at an early age. He was sent to McLaren's Reform School for Boys in Woodburn, Oregon, and later served a term at Rocky Butt Jail in Portland. In 1964, he received a 15-year sentence for attack and armed robbery. After being released on parole, Gilmore was transferred to the federal penitentiary in Marion, Illinois, where he was treated with the antipsychotic drug Prolixin. Gilmore was tried only for Bushnell slaying, which was particularly strong. Despite his efforts to convince the jury that he had acted while insane, he was convicted on October 7 and sentenced to death. His death did not bring an immediate wave of slayings, but the pace subsequently quickened, with 1,443 convicts ended in the U.S. in the first 40 years after his demise. His last words? "Let's do it." Number 4, Carla Faye Tucker. Carla Faye Tucker, an American woman, received the ending penalty for slaying 2 persons during a break-in with a pickaxe. Since Chipita Rodriguez in 1863, she was the first woman to be ended in Texas. Since Velma Barfield in North Carolina in 1984, she was the first in the U.S.
Somebody out there could have gotten hold of me if the effort would have been put into it. Certainly. Except for my dad. I mean, he noticed it, but he didn't know what to do.
After being found guilty of slaying someone in Texas in 1984, she was placed on ending row for 14 years. She was then fatally injected to end her life. She caused an unusually large national and international movement, among which were some foreign government officials calling for the commuting of her sentence to life in prison without the chance of release because of her gender and her much publicized conversion to Christianity. Her last words? "Yes, sir, I would like to say to all of you, the Thornton family and Jerry Dean's family, that I am so sorry." Number 3, Ricky Ray Rector. The 1981 slaying of Conway, Arkansas police officer Robert Martin was the crime for which American slayer Ricky Ray Rector received the ending penalty. Rector slayed a man in a restaurant and ran away, going on the run for 3 days before agreeing to bring himself up. But rather than handing himself over, he shot the policeman in the rear who had helped arrange his surrender. He then attempted self-harm by slaying himself in the head. In actuality, the attempt led to a lobotomy. For his last meal, Rector requested and received a steak, fried chicken, cherry Kool-Aid, and pecan pie. As noted above, Rector left the pie on the side of the tray, telling the corrections officers who came to take him to the slaying chamber that he was saving it for later. The slice of pecan pie was not disposed of until Rector had been ended. His last words? Saving it for later. Number 2, Thomas J. Grasso. Thomas Joseph Grasso was an American convicted slayer who was ended in Oklahoma for the slaying of Hilda Johnson in December 1990 and Leslie Holtz in New York in July 1991. Born in West Babylon, New York, Grasso had a lengthy criminal record, including theft and theft from employers. He moved to Tampa, Florida, where he committed the slayings. Grasso confessed to the slayings and was sentenced to 20 years to life in 1992. However, the New York legislature opposed the ending penalty, leading to the slaying. Grasso's case became a political issue, and he was extradited to Oklahoma after George E. Pataki's gubernatorial campaign. He was confined to his ending row cell for 23 hours a day, with 1 hour of exercise per day and 3 showers per week. Grasso released 4 statements to the press before his slaying, including a line from T.S. Eliot's The Dry Salvages and a light-hearted poem commemorating his slaying. His last words, "I did not get my SpaghettiOs, I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this," were a poignant reminder of the power of the past and the importance of freedom from the past. Number 1. Velma Barfield. American serial slayer Margie Velma Barfield was found guilty of just 1 slaying, but then admitted to 6. She was the first woman to be ended in the U.S. since 1962, and the first since the ending penalty was reinstated in 1976. In addition, Barfield was the first female slayer via fatal injection. Her father was violently abusive, and she was raised close to Fayetteville after being born in Eastover, North Carolina. She had 2 kids after getting married to Thomas Burke in 1949. Following a hysterectomy, Barfield experienced back pain, which eventually led to heroin addiction.
The last 10 years was just like that, a drug nightmare. Days of not knowing where you are or what you've done. Living in prison every day is a struggle, even at its best.
Burke passed away following a hysterectomy in 1969. She wed Jennings Barfield in 1970. He passed away from cardiac issues. She was found guilty on 7 counts of writing fraudulent checks in 1975 and given a 6-month prison sentence. She started taking care of the elderly in 1976. Montgomery, Dolly, and John Henry Lee were slayed by her in 1977. Her last words, "I know that everybody has gone through a lot of pain, all the families connected, and I am sorry. And I want to thank everybody who has been supporting me all these 6 years." That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.